to the Brood for Life podcast, episode 1 of season 2. Just want to say thank you for everybody that listened to season 1 and those first 13 episodes of the podcast. This one I'm going to jump into a little bit about work and some of the things that I see within the environments that I've worked in that I don't know if it's me or if it's just habitual issues within the kind of job that I do, and the first job or the first portion of my life was all in retail and all in stores, and I've always worked in the grocery side of retail from the time I was 15 years old up until about a year and a half ago now. It's got to be close to. And now I'm on the sales side, so I work for a wholesaler now, and we sell essentially all the same things that I was selling in the store. It's just now I work for the supplier as opposed to the store. And some of the things that I notice about um, working in business is that there always seems to be a flat structure, and there is always opportunities within those structures to either succeed or fail, or places where there's opportunities to be able to perform better or be more efficient, or just to be able to be more successful. And this job that I'm in now is really no different from what I was seeing in the retail side of business, which is when there's opportunities for things to be, like I said, um, done more efficiently and streamline things to help reduce any chances of there being challenges and problems later on down the road. So, my first year with this company, I thought was pretty good. I always think that training is a huge opportunity where no matter where you go, training's never going to be perfect, and always going to be an ongoing thing. Um, so I wish I learned a little bit more or had an opportunity to learn a little bit more before I got going, considering I've never been on this side of the business. I feel like I've been able to kind of, adapt and rise and grow and capitalize on the opportunities that have been given to me. Um, but there's always some things that, over my years of being in this kind of a business that I see as challenges and as opportunities within both companies that I work for or had worked for. This one, like I said, a year and a half, and then a mid-sized supermarket that I worked for 20 years. And some of those challenges are, as an employee, you feel like the companies that you work for want to hear about your challenges and some of the things that we could be doing better to either help people develop, help people to be more successful within their position, or fix challenges and things that seem to be habitual problems within how those places go to business every single day. And in this one, in my current job role, like I see lots of issues. Definitely some pertaining to structure. I come from a company where the structure is pretty solid, and you always knew who the players were and what their job title was and what their responsibility is. And this company that I work for now, like up until probably the last 4 months, there's really been no clear definition, and when you ask, nobody can actually give you a clear definition as to what an individual's title is, or they can't because some of these people are wearing multiple hats. So they're not just in charge of sales, but they're in charge of accounting, and they're in charge of the warehouse, and they're in charge of this, and they're in charge of that. Now, the problem with that is that you can't be successful as a business, as a growing business, when you have an individual wearing too many hats. If in especially in the way that this company that I work for now has grown, and they've grown easily um, anywhere from 10 to 12% every single year over the last 4 years. So they've been growing and cutting into the market share of other companies like ours over over that time frame. And what has happened now is that we have to modify the way that we go to business. And I can see some of these opportunities, but unfortunately, like a lot of businesses, is you can only share so much, because pointing out the fact that there's flaws and opportunities within a business, or that somebody in certain roles is not being, um, I don't want to say 100% good at what they do. I think that especially in this current place, it's just there's too many people wearing too many different hats, so it's impossible to do everything um, efficiently, and to address all the problems, or even recognize that there's problems before they become problems. There have been some things that they have done, like there was no clear defined cutoff time to have orders in, and then you would have people calling and adding stuff on, and then what happens is that over the progression of when those orders start going in and when they actually stop adding orders, now the warehouse can't start picking orders until all those things are done, which then delays when the trucks can go out, which then causes problems because accounts have certain delivery windows and receiving times, and if the truck doesn't get there within that time, then they either start calling to find out where their truck is, or even worse, like loads get refused because of that window. And they the company has established now a cutoff window for us to get those orders in, and they are going to start monitoring who goes into the system after that cutoff time by recognizing piece counts, and I would assume that those people are going to be addressed. Um, but I don't know, because, like I said, I've only been with this company for a year. But we also have some accounting issues with payments not being applied, or being applied to the wrong accounts, and emails for account statements getting sent to the wrong accounts, and specifically that stuff's not good, because you're allowing somebody else's information to be in somebody else's hands, which is, it could be embarrassing if two accounts know each other, two owners know each other. Um, but one of the things that really kind of bothers me is that, being in a sales position, you have to deal with buyers. And I took on this account which had a huge opportunity to do, like 300 cases of fresh chicken, or more every single week. And then on top of that, also handle some breaded chicken issues, where they were going to buy like 6 pallets of about 5 different varieties of each frozen item on a weekly basis too. So a huge, huge account with a lot of opportunity for me to be able to grow my business for the company. Um, but the thing that I have found is that, because people are wearing too many hats, to be able to reach out to them and get pricing on individual items, so that you can get back to your customer with accurate information, and solidify that they're going to place these orders, that part of it has been absolutely frustrating. Um, I got to follow up every single day and multiple times a day, and then people get upset that I'm following up, and you can't be upset when somebody's asking for information, and all it is for you is a phone call to a supplier to find out what's available and when we can get it and what the cost is on it, so that I can get that information back to my customer. Like, that shouldn't take a week, 2 weeks, and in some cases it took 4 months for me to get some of those prices back. And I don't think that's fair. I think that that's an opportunity as a company that we could absolutely do better. There's no reason why we can't get those numbers back in a reasonable time frame. And what's sad is that, like, when you request this information, and you copy everybody that needs to know. So I would copy the buyer, I would copy the assistant buyer, I copy the guy that's in charge of all the buyers, and I copy my direct boss, and yet nobody seems to take the initiative to get answers. And that part is really, really, really frustrating. But you can't speak up too much about that, because now all of a sudden, what happens is you become the problem, and you're impatient, and you're this and you're that. But, like, at what point is it too long for somebody to get an answer? Like when we go to the doctors, we expect answers for test results within a reasonable time frame, because if there's actually something wrong, we would want to know it as soon as possible so that those issues can be addressed as soon as possible. And I feel like the same kind of thought process goes into this. If you want to have a good customer and you want to be able to retain your customer, you need to be able to, one, communicate with them, get back to them in a timely manner, and handle their needs and be accessible for them. And if we can't do those things, and we can't do those things consistently, then how do you grow a business? And how do you keep your employees happy? If there's not clear expectations and there's not clear guidelines, and there is not a clear accountability for poor performance or lack of follow through or any of those things, then what happens to your business? Well, naturally, what will happen is that you will get disgruntled employees. You will get people that are frustrated and will only give you so much of an effort. They're not going to put their whole being into it, or they're not going to care. They're going to give you about a 60% care. And what happens is that your business starts to struggle. Your turnover rate becomes really high, and that doesn't look good as you post for job positions and people ask, well, like what's your turnover rate? Or they start looking because all this information is available and they see that there's a high turnover rate. That's not a place where you're going to get good candidates to fill your positions, because they're going to be worried that if they come on board, that you could just cut them loose too. Those are some of my frustrations with where I'm at. I also feel like at times my direct supervisor doesn't necessarily he only comes to me when he feels like there's something that he needs to talk to me about. There's never like a check-in like, "Hey, how's it going?" or whatever. It's "Oh, your account's behind on payment," or you need to do this and you need to do that, and why don't you call me? But the problem with that too is that when I call him, he doesn't actually give me any kind of any real feedback. He just answers my questions with more questions, and when I ask for guidance or who do I need to talk to get an answer, it just seems like it's a mind game. And then even if I try to put it on paper or in an email, he doesn't read the email, or he tells me he's too busy to read all the emails that he gets, so he can't possibly respond to everything, but also make sure that I email him, which doesn't make any sense to me. Like, just seems like a giant circle of I don't give a fuck, and I'm only going to care when it falls on my plate, which is being somebody who was in management for 20 years. Um, if my people came to me and asked me a question and I just kind of beat around the bush and never gave them a direct answer, or never even got back to them or told them, listen, come to me when you have a problem. And then when they came to me, tell them I'm too busy to deal with their problem. Like that, that doesn't make any sense. That's not what a manager does, as far as I'm concerned. When I say that some of the problems that I just listed at my current place is stuff that I had seen when I was working in the retail side of things, um, I, that's not such a far fetched thought process, because in the 20 years that I worked for the company that I worked for, and the 30 years that I worked in retail, the first few years of it I thought were they were fine. I mean, I didn't necessarily like the store manager where I worked. Like, he wasn't a bad guy. He just seemed to be um, he could just be a little nasty every once in a while, but for the most part, he left everybody alone, and um, he was okay. I think he did just enough to get by. He wasn't real savvy, and I really do think he was just biding his time, because I think he knew that the owner wasn't doing well and that he was going to pass away, and I think he was just hanging out to get whatever portion of whatever at that place that he was going to get. And when I went to the bigger chain, that's when I realized and started to see a little bit more about, I don't want to call it the corporate world, but like how different businesses go to market and how they treat their employees, and the um, the things that are requested of you as an employee, and the expectations of you as an employee. And when I first got there, uh, I I thought I was going to be in a much better place, and I think I said it before when I talked a little bit about the retail side of business. Um, I would go in and I was working. I was scheduled 5 days, and I'd be working 10:30 to 7 or 11:30 to 8, and I'd end up working at the end of the week. I'd have to come in an hour early every single day, probably stay an hour late. Oh, by the way, we need you to come in on your day off, which I was fine with because it was all money to me. It wasn't like I had much going on. But the things that did frustrate me was um, I'd come in and the entire department would go on break, and they would expect everything to be back to perfect by time they got back, and they could be gone for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, a half hour, and they wanted you to clean up the mess that they had made while they were working in the morning. And I never liked that because I always thought it was um, I don't know. It was demeaning, It makes you feel like you're just their bitch, and they don't give a fuck. They're just going to do what they want to do and make whatever mess because they're not the ones who have to clean it up. They're going to leave it for somebody else to fix. And I didn't like that. And then, as my time kind of went on, I after going through some of that stuff, like I thought about quitting a million times, but uh, I don't know why I didn't. I just couldn't, like I think I just wanted to prove to myself and to this job because I had up until this point I had only really worked at one place and I tried to be loyal to where I worked. I kind of just put my head down and I was like, well, fuck these people. Um, I'm just going to do what I have to do to show that I'm more valuable to get off of this bullshit night shift and get onto a different shift so that I don't have to deal with it anymore. I can be a part of how the day begins and less about how the day ends. And I did, and um, that's when I think I really started to pick up more of how this company operated. And they always leaned really, really heavy on customer service, and they had started gearing their stores more to a full service butcher shop and instead of a self service counter, and that was kind of where my experience was before I went to go work for them. We didn't have a self service case, so anything that you wanted as far as deli stuff or meat stuff or any of those kind of things, like you had to go to the counter and you had to deal with somebody, and that was the only way you got it. So with them transitioning to that, it seemed like I was going to be a good fit to help not just nurture the culture that they wanted to start bringing to business, but also help show people who are uncomfortable with dealing with people over the counter like that like there's a way to do it, and there's a way to be positive and how to deal with customer issues and stuff like that. Nobody's ever perfect when they come to the counter. There's always some people that are happy and in a good mood, and then there's always some other people that are going to be miserable, and no matter what you say or do, they're still going to be miserable. But there's a way to handle that, and I think that was one of the things I brought to the table when they hired me. Um, and then as I got it more into the management and I got to learn a little bit about what the expectations were from the company as a manager. It wasn't so straightforward, like I knew I had to have good numbers, but then you had to watch payroll and you had to make sure that everybody was being productive, and then there was food safety standards and making sure the room was clean and make sure the sales floor was clean and checking dates, and there was a lot of responsibility that kind of encompassed all of that. And I was lucky enough there that I had some people that really saw the potential in me, so they put me in positions where I was going to be able to succeed and learn and be successful for the company. And later on down the road, I really some of those people I I really I really started to see what their true colors were, and it wasn't what I thought it was. Back to the expectations and stuff, and we when I was there, you had to do all these little things, and they expect you to be um, Superman with less than stellar staff, but at the same time, they kind of tied your hands a little bit with how you could address, um, issues, And it seemed like it always, the one thing that they always came back to me at was, well, do they have a training checklist and were they trained on this and whatever else? And I always made sure I went through the checklist and I always made sure that they were in the file. But like as policies changed, they would use that again. But because it wasn't on the checklist, because how could it be? It was a new procedure change, a new policy change, or whatever. Like, how could it be on a checklist that um, they went through easily 5 years, 10 years, and some of these people worked 15 years previously. So how could there be a checklist when there was nothing provided to show or to prove that there was training there for them? So that was one thing. And then when you had like tardiness or late behaviors, people underperforming just as far as like not getting the basic things done in a day, then you ran into some more friction. Um, Policies changed as far as payroll and what's considered an absence and what's not. And if CT sick time covers it, then we can't hold it against them. It's not a real absence. But like, what are you doing as a company when an absence is no longer an absence? So you have an absentee policy where you can't have any more than 5 absences in a 6 month rolling period, but you can actually be absent more than that because CT sick time will cover it. Whether it's actual sick time or not really depends on how it's entered into the computer, which is completely up to HR, who is also the same department telling you that you can or can't do this, even though you communicate with them as to why there was an absence. Right. Wrap your head around all of that. So now you have a bad employee who's absent a lot. You can't write them up because HR didn't enter their absence into the system right and they can't go back. So now you have an employee who is now learning how to beat the system and you can't do anything about it. So now the rest of your team sees that certain people are getting away with certain things. You can't hold them accountable. So now the rest of your team starts to follow suit. And that is the culture that started to get bred. And as a manager, when they start leaving you with employees that you can't hold accountable, when they start shaving your man hours back in order to do jobs, and they start expecting more out of you, now you have to run two departments. You need to make sure that food safety is good on both sides. You don't have enough staff, so when you schedule yourself, when you should be monitoring both departments, you can't because you're needed in one or the other. And that means that if you're working your hours in one department, then you don't have the time to fully monitor what's going on in the other department. And these concepts, which just like when you say them and when you see them happening, it seems like it's a common sense thing where you go, well, you of course you can't have a person in charge of two different places and not give them the time to monitor both places. You don't give them enough hours to be able to make sure that training is done appropriately, that you can monitor the standards and make sure that everything is good to go. You are just going to hold them accountable knowing that the job you're asking them to do it's not unachievable, but the percentage of being highly successful at it is so small that you're setting yourself up for a reason to find fault. So that was something else that um, really started to bother me by being on the retail side. And there was a lot of talking out of both sides of the mouth that like, oh, if you do this, this, and this, then we'll be able to do this, this, and this. And then when you have an employee that does those things, then you don't, as a company, you don't follow through on the promises that were made. Now you are creating either somebody that is not going to have faith and trust in your business, but they're going to start to be a little negative. You can't break promises, and if you're not sure if you can follow through on your promise or what you're saying, then make that clear. You can't just say if you do this and then we'll do this in return and then not give them what you said you were going to when they met their side of the expectation. that's bad management. That's talking out of both sides of your mouth. So that creates a culture of lying. Um, and that started to happen a lot. A lot of filtering was going on. So we can't talk about what the problems are in a department with the store manager, because that would mean he or she would have to assume fault for not being supportive or not following through when you go to them with issues. Um, and you can't talk to their boss about it, because now their boss comes down and now it makes you look like an idiot. So basically, what we do is we just don't address problems and we don't talk about problems, uh, and that's what makes them go away. Well, the problems don't go away with that kind of with that kind of a structure. What it does is the problem goes from being something that could have easily been fixed to being something that now, when it blows up, the person who acknowledged that this is a problem, we should probably address that. Either one of two things happens: either they look like the fucking asshole, or they stand there and they go, I don't know what you want me to do. I'm not fixing it. I told you this was going to happen. I asked for your support on this to be able to get it addressed, and you told me that it wasn't important, or oh, it'll work itself out, and then it didn't. And guess what happens? Now, when their boss comes down and goes, what the hell happened here? Now you have that individual saying, well, I don't know. I talked to so and so about this. I don't understand why they didn't address it, and blah, 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 blah. So now behind the doors, behind those closed doors, what's happening is you as an individual address your boss with a problem. Your boss chose not to do anything about it. So there, when it blew up, now their boss comes down and asks them why it happened, and now your boss throws you under the bus, like you didn't do anything, you didn't acknowledge it, you didn't try to address it when you did, and you don't even know what's going on because it's not done in front of you. What happens is now you, as the employee, become the problem. And when you start wondering why promotions don't happen, why am I not getting these hours, why is so and so a little cold to me, that's why. Because you did the right thing for the company and for your store, but somebody else didn't want to do their job, and then they blamed you for it when they got called out on not doing their job. That's the wonderful world of retail that I was working in. And I just couldn't deal with it anymore. I couldn't deal with the lying. I couldn't deal with the deceitfulness. I couldn't deal with the fact that nobody wanted to address problems, or nobody wanted to even acknowledge the fact that there was a problem. Nobody wants to give you a clear path as to how do you achieve your goals. They want to sit down and have a conversation with you about what your plan is and what your career path is, and where do you see yourself in this time frame, which is good because those things need to happen. But when you take the time and you discuss these things with your supervisor and the human resources department, because those are the people within this company that help design your path and your goals in order to be able to put yourself in a position where you can um, be a candidate for a promotion, or be able to be a candidate for the direction that you want your career to go in. Those things don't happen. There's never a path, and when you ask about the path, nobody knows. They got to talk to somebody else, but nobody ever gets back to you on it. And there's no honesty either when it comes to, like, we all have dreams, and we all have goals, and we all have places that we would like to go within our job, but like if if they're not seeing that in us, or if there's certain attributes as an individual that have been shown to be attributes that create a successful person in a certain role, then and you don't have those, or it's not something that you seem to be grasping, or even if they do give you an opportunity to learn these attributes and try to show that you can do these things, um, nobody ever sits down and says, listen, like, let's talk about your path. maybe this isn't the right course for you. Like, I see you being phenomenal at these different things. What if we try to shift your thought process to maybe heading towards this as your next step, as opposed to where you would like to go? And maybe we can go from there and end up, where you would like to be. But these conversations don't happen. And what it does to an individual is that, like, it frustrates you. And when you can't get an answer and you can't get um, anything, any kind of like feedback as to what it is that you need to do, or what it is that you're not showing, or what are some things that I could work on, or they sit down and they give you all this stuff that you could work on, and we're going to get you involved in this, this, and this. And then when you ask about those things and when you're going to be involved in them, and nobody can give you a clear answer, most of the time what happens is that this company that I work for said, "Well, we're not doing that anymore. That program's no longer active." Well, now what? You just give up on the employee that you decided that you're not going to do anything, that these employees are not worth your time, like, especially in retail. Everybody from the department manager up relies on their salary by their team. So, as a department manager, I need my team to come in and do their job on a regular basis, because if we are successful as a team, then I am successful as a manager, which means my numbers as a manager look good, and that puts me in a position to get a bonus. And if those things happen and all those managers all do their job and are capable of getting their teams to follow through and get all their jobs done, then the assistant store manager and the store manager look like heroes. So everybody relies on the person below them to be able to be successful. But what is forgotten is that it takes it takes a team to be successful. And outside of the department manager role, the word team and working together and those kind of statements always come from the assistant store manager and the store manager, but not all of them live it. So let's say, for example, if I'm in charge of meat and seafood, which I was for this company, and my seafood person calls out, and now I'm shorthanded in meat because I got to send either myself or one of my other employees over to seafood in order to operate that department for the day. So now we're shorthanded 8 hours. As a team, the assistant store manager or the store manager should jump in and do what they can to help, because that's what a team does. And that's where you start to see, as a manager, so as the store manager or the assistant manager jumps in and works within these departments to help in those times, that's where you start to see where, all right, this manager actually does a good job with their food safety or their rotation or their cleanliness, their organization, their team really works great together. Like, that's an opportunity to get in there and really see um, firsthand what it is that your managers do. But some of these people just walk around. They don't care if the ship's sinking or whatever. And if their boss comes in, their answer is, well, they're a little shorthanded today. They had a couple of call outs or a call out or whatever. Like, your customers don't care if there's a call out. Your customers don't care about any of the nonsense that goes on in the building. What they care about is that there's product on the shelf. What they care about is that there are associates there to help them when they have questions. What they care about is that their store is clean. What they care about is that their store is organized. That's what they care about. And the only way that happens is everybody in the building works together to get the job done. But what do you do when people aren't doing their jobs? And people that can jump in don't jump in. They just watch you struggle, and then they criticize you for struggling. What does that mean? And what do you do at that point? Do you just give up? Well, I think the smart thing to do, which is what I did, is you put yourself out there and you see what other opportunities there are with your skill set, because my previous employer always wanted you, they paid me well, but they always wanted you to feel like there's nothing else for you outside of here, so your best bet is to stay here. But when you're not giving your employee a reason to stay, and you're making their life harder and more stressful, and you're demanding more, you're not paying more. Um, what do you do? Like when you're frustrated every single day going to work, what do you do? You start looking, you put your feelers out there. I looked at multiple different jobs when I decided to make a move, and I was lucky enough to actually have a headhunter reach out to me for the job that I'm in. Now, not to say, like, I had said earlier, like every job is going to have its sticking points. But what I will say is that this company this year, with all the growth and stuff, they have already made changes with shortening, like the cutoff times for orders to be in, and they're going to start monitoring who goes in after those cutoff times. Now, is that great? No, but it's a step in the right direction to start addressing some of the issues that we have. Um, my previous employer, like they said they were going to do certain things, not necessarily just like that, but like do things to change the way that they go to business, to change the way that they handle employee issues, to change the culture within the building. Um, but unfortunately for them, is they say one thing, but they really are doing something else. And they used to be a company that was really, really based on customer service. They are and were a family owned company, but when you don't promote within in a small business like this, and you start filling positions within your corporate office with people from other companies that aren't familiar with the culture, they're not familiar with the way that you go to business, because it's not the same, and it wasn't the same as other major chains. They didn't operate the same way as the Stop and Shops or the Price Choppers or any of those other places. They operated very differently because they put their customers and their employees first. They put their customer experience ahead of the payroll dollars. They put your employees' needs ahead of how much you were paying them. But as they started getting in more and more of these people from ShopRite and Stop and Shop, and these people that are bottom line driven companies, and not caring so much about your customer experience or your employees, what you did is you put these people in a position, and now they're shaving back payroll. They're looking at every cent. They're worried about every single dollar. You want to have great customer service, but you don't have enough people on hand to provide the customer service that we used to. Um, and it was crazy because that this company went from um, a low high or a high low operator, which means like you sell a lot of product at a small gross profit, to now you sell a little bit of product with a really high gross profit. So now you have to sell less to make the same money, which means now you can slide the scale of the payroll because you don't need as many bodies there in order to get the same gross profit, which is fine. You can operate like that, but you can't provide the individualized customer service that you are telling your customers and you're telling your employees has to be provided. How does that work? You can't squeeze blood from a stone. You can't just expect something that's not achievable. You can't hold on to your bad employees and give them every opportunity in the world to continue to be a bad employee, and not support the people that are actually coming in and doing their jobs and doing it well. How does like you can't you can't succeed like that. You can't continue to grow without development. And if you're not developing your people because you're growing too quick, now you're spread so thin that now you're putting people in positions that haven't even been trained how to do their job, and you're holding them to the same accountability as people who know how to do it. You're sending the people who know how to do it to prop up these other people, and you're moving them around instead of just teaching them how to do a job, and you're expecting your seasoned people to fix all the problems. Meanwhile, you're still promoting people who don't know how to do these jobs. So you take somebody who is a part-time clerk you're in need. He does it. They do a good job as a part-time clerk, and now you're going to make them a meat manager. And guess what? That same individual is going to get put into a position where now they're in a store manager training program. Meanwhile, while your seasoned people that train them, that developed them, that fixed all the problems that these new people created, and you're going to bypass them, and you're going to promote the person who doesn't know what they're doing. What part of business acumen does that fit into? At what point does the house of cards fall? Unfortunately, this company continues to grow, and I am still friends with a lot of people that work within the company, and all of them keep telling me the same thing. It's not getting any better. It's getting worse. I hate working here. This is not the place that it used to be. And ironically, like other people that have left or other people that have retired that I have seen or I have talked to, all say I should have got out sooner. The place is not the company that I used to work for, that I enjoyed working for. It is now everything the direct opposite of that. It's a shame because it used to be a really good company to work for, and it used to be really, really good to its customers, and it used to be, honestly, I at the time, like, I thought this company was better than any Whole Foods or any Trader Joe's or whatever. Like, you went in and you got quality product at a decent price. They ran good sales. When you had issues, there was always an associate there to be able to help you. And now it's a shell of itself. It's a bad analogy, but like it's like a superior professional athlete or a superior collegiate or high school athlete that happens to be a great student also and has the world by the balls and then just gets involved in drugs or never just stops giving a shit and only becomes a fraction of where their potential was because they didn't put in the effort. They allowed a cancer or a negative environment to ruin everything that they were. That's kind of really similar to what the heck's going on with this company. They were very, very good, and they were um, growing at a fast rate, and people were constantly coming in and trying to work for them. But like, they don't invest enough back in their people. They don't invest enough back in their technology. They just want to have footprints of stores all over the place, but none of them operate soundly. It just doesn't make any sense. And I have thought about sending an email and just, sharing my thoughts as to, you know, where the company was when I got hired and where it was over the years of when I worked for them and how it was or how it felt like it was when I left. I talk myself out of it every single time because I honestly think it would fall on deaf ears and it would be a giant waste of my time to do it. I don't think anything that I had to say would be heard. Um, and I don't think it would make any bit of a difference for the people that I know still work there, and I would do it because I would want things to get better for them, but I really don't think it will make any bit of a difference. I think they would just read the letter and say, well, this is just somebody who was upset that they didn't meet their expectations. But like I said, I did more than my share of uh, work. I made that company millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I developed a bunch of people. I fixed a bunch of problems. I uh, I opened stores. I traveled wherever it is that they wanted me to travel. I did everything that was expected of me, and then some. I made time to help other departments. I made time to learn how to run the store. I ran the store. Um, I did everything that was expected of me, and unfortunately, a lot of the things that I had mentioned are what happened to me, and that being promises were broken. People that I thought were, I don't want to say allies, but people that I thought were in my corner that were making sure that what I did on a day in and day out basis was being seen and was being brought to the attention of people that would make decisions on where my future lied. Uh, but they weren't. What they were doing is they were using everything that I did to boost themselves, and they took advantage of it all. And then they had the nerve to look at me and lie even more and know that they didn't meet any of their promises, that they were literally everything that they said they weren't, or everything that they said they didn't like. I'm happy that I'm out of there. I'm less stressed. Um, I wouldn't ever go back to a position like that. I really don't. I think if I ever had to go back into the retail side of things, I would probably open my own business and do it that way. But I wouldn't go back and work for another one of those corporate chains. I couldn't deal with the the politics and the bullshit of whose ass are you going to kiss, who are you going to blow smoke up, and who are you going to lie to in order to get what you want, because it's not about whether or not you can do the job, it's just whether or not you can sell yourself for that job. And I don't miss any of that. Um, so with that said, um, episode 1, season 2. I hope you guys really enjoy this one. As always, you can please give the Instagram page a follow, at Brewed for Life Podcast, and also check out the homebrew page that's at Baines Brewing on Instagram. And please, any feedback or any insight, feel free to reach out and leave a message. I'd love to hear from you guys. So we'll talk to you guys real soon.